Why do most men fail? Not because they lack strength, but because they dare not stand apart. In a world where conformity is worshipped, those who are different are feared, envied, and if wise, unconquerable. Today, we uncover a secret that rulers, generals, and cunning men of history have always known: the hidden power of being different. Niccolo Machiavelli once observed that fortune favors not the timid, but the bold, the ones who bend custom rather than bow to it. Yet in our age, many imprison themselves in sameness. They fear solitude, they dread walking away, and they confuse patience with weakness. Today, we shall unmask principles that separate the lion from the flock. Principles that, if understood, give you an advantage in every arena of life: politics, war, and the quiet battles of the heart. In every age, men fear the one who dares to stand apart. Conformity is the cloak of safety, but it is also the chain of mediocrity. The masses huddle together, thinking alike, speaking alike, living alike, for in their sameness they find comfort. Yet comfort breeds weakness. What they call harmony is nothing but slavery disguised as peace. To be different, to walk another path, is to invite suspicion, envy, and resistance. But it is also to command a power that few ever dare to wield. Those who rule, those who shape history, are never the ones who blended in, but the ones who separated themselves from the herd. The true strength lies not in clinging, but in walking away. A man who can abandon a deal, a throne, or even a lover without hesitation is a man others fear to cross. The world is ruled by those who cannot be chained by necessity. In that freedom lies the authority to dictate terms, for dependency is the root of servitude. To walk away is to hold dominion over those who cannot. Solitude is another weapon, though most men misinterpret it as weakness. In truth, it is in solitude that the mind becomes sharpened like a blade. Crowds drown thought, noise blinds vision, but in the silence of being alone, one learns to see the world as it truly is. The greatest rulers consulted many, but their truest counsel was found in themselves. A man at peace in solitude becomes sovereign over his own mind, and from that sovereignty comes the ability to govern others. Patience, too, is a force as dangerous as the sword. The impatient man is easy to read, easy to defeat, for he shows his hunger and his fear. But the patient man is like a bow drawn slowly and silently, until his strike lands with deadly precision. Patience hides ambition until ambition becomes irresistible. It is a mask that fools enemies into thinking you are idle, while in truth you are calculating. What grants the greatest edge, however, is not brute strength, but the possession of a trait that others cannot predict. Uniqueness disorients rivals, for they cannot prepare defenses against what they do not understand. This unpredictability is a silent weapon, one that tilts the game in your favor before the game even begins. To be different, then, is to embrace a crown invisible to the timid but blinding to those who look upon it. The masses may fear you, they may despise you, they may even plot against you, but they will never ignore you. And in a world where most men go unseen, the one who cannot be ignored already holds power over them all. Most men spend their lives begging for acceptance, yet die unnoticed. The problem is not lack of talent, but lack of courage to be different. Today, we uncover the hidden power that separates rulers from the ruled. Machiavelli teaches us that fortune bows not to the desperate, but to the man who needs nothing. Power begins with the ability to walk away. When you cannot be bound by gold, by comfort, or by affection, you terrify those who depend on such things. The man who can abandon a deal, a crown, or a lover is untouchable, for he is owned by no one. To walk away is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Dependency breeds obedience, but freedom to leave makes others obey you. Machiavelli teaches us that fortune bows not to the desperate, but to the man who needs nothing. Power begins with the ability to walk away. When you cannot be bound by gold, by comfort, or by affection, you terrify those who depend on such things. The man who can abandon a deal, a crown, or a lover is untouchable, for he is owned by no one. To walk away is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. Dependency breeds obedience, but freedom to leave makes others obey you. Most men are terrified of silence, for in silence they meet themselves. They run to crowds, to noise, to constant distraction, yet wonder why their vision is clouded. Today, we uncover why solitude, feared by the many, is the secret weapon of the few. Machiavelli understood that a prince surrounded by flatterers becomes blind, but a prince who dares to be alone sees with clear eyes. To be alone is not to be weak, but to be sovereign over one's own mind. The crowd dulls the senses, it drowns ambition, it buries sharp thought beneath the weight of approval. In solitude, the mind becomes honed, like a blade sharpened against stone. Great rulers, great conquerors, great thinkers, they drew their strength not from the noise of men, but from the silence of isolation. The man who can endure his own company becomes dangerous, for he no longer depends on the voices of others to define his worth or guide his path. The masses need the herd to feel alive. The master learns to breathe alone. Most men fear solitude more than death. They drown themselves in noise, in the chatter of friends, in the endless hum of distraction, for silence terrifies them. Why? Because in silence they are forced to face themselves, stripped of illusion, stripped of masks. The crowd hides a man's emptiness, but when he is alone, he sees the truth of what he is. Few can bear that weight, which is why most will never know the power that solitude grants. In solitude, a man's mind sharpens. Away from the demands of the herd, away from the opinions that seek to mold him, he begins to think with clarity. The masses live by borrowed thoughts, by doctrines inherited, by beliefs absorbed from others. But the man who sits alone and listens only to himself discovers a voice that is uncorrupted. It is from this silence that vision is born. A ruler who cannot endure solitude is ruled by the whispers of his court, but a ruler who can retreat into himself governs not only his kingdom but also his destiny. History remembers the conquerors, the thinkers, the creators, not because they followed the crowd, but because they withdrew from it. They learned to think apart, to see what others could not see. Leonardo studied in solitude, Caesar plotted in solitude, Machiavelli himself wrote in solitude. Their strength came not from constant counsel, but from daring to be alone with their own thoughts, untainted by the weakness of the mob. The crowd dulls ambition. Surrounded by others, a man measures himself by their standards, and soon he becomes one of them. He dresses like them, thinks like them, dreams no larger than them. But the man who is alone sees beyond the limits of the herd. He is not distracted by their mediocrity. He begins to imagine what is greater, and because he imagines, he begins to act. There is danger, too, in being constantly surrounded. The voices of others become chains, their approval a leash. A man who depends on the crowd cannot act with freedom, for he fears its judgment. But the man who has conquered solitude fears nothing. He makes decisions without trembling, for he has already faced the silence and found strength within it. This independence terrifies others, for he cannot be flattered, bribed, or swayed as easily as those who depend on constant companionship. To be alone is to test the strength of your own mind. Most men fail this test and rush back into the comfort of the herd. But those who pass it discover that solitude is not emptiness. It is sovereignty. It is the moment when a man ceases to be a servant to others and becomes the ruler of himself. Most men rush to act, mistaking speed for strength. Yet in their haste they reveal their hunger, their fear, their weakness. What they call boldness is often nothing but desperation. But patience is a weapon far deadlier than any sword. Machiavelli knew that time itself is the greatest ally of the cunning. The impatient man strikes too soon, exhausting his strength before the battle is truly won. He is easy to predict, easy to provoke, and easy to defeat. But the patient man, he waits, he studies, he allows his enemies to expose themselves, to waste their energy, to reveal their flaws. Patience is dangerous because it hides ambition under a mask of calm. And when the strike finally comes, it is devastating. To the crowd, patience looks like weakness. To the strategist, it is the art of certainty. The bow drawn slowly releases the arrow with the greatest force, and the man who masters patience never fights many battles. He fights only the one that decides everything. Men reveal themselves when they are forced to wait. The weak become restless, the greedy show their hunger, and the fearful expose their doubts. Impatience is the great betrayer of character. Watch a man long enough and he will tell you everything you need to know, not with words, but with the cracks that emerge in his composure. That is why patience is so dangerous. It allows you to see without being seen, to strike without being anticipated. The impatient man is always in a hurry to prove himself. He rushes to take the first opportunity, thinking speed will secure victory. Yet by moving too soon, he shows his hand, reveals his strategy, and leaves himself open. The patient man does not rush to act, for he knows that power is not in the first strike, but in the decisive strike. He studies his enemy, he lets the battlefield shift, and he waits for the moment when the outcome is certain. This restraint looks like weakness to the foolish, but it is strength disguised as calm. Consider war. A general who throws his soldiers forward too quickly loses not only men but also momentum. His impatience feeds his opponent with openings, but a general who waits, who starves the enemy of resources, who lets time weaken morale and erode discipline, he conquers without fighting. The greatest victories are often not those won by force, but those won by patience, when the enemy has destroyed himself before the battle begins. The same law governs politics. A ruler who cannot wait for the right moment will squander his authority in reckless decisions. But the ruler who can wait, who can appear inactive while secretly watching and preparing, becomes untouchable. His rivals think him passive, but he is a lion crouched in the grass. And when he finally moves, his strike is so sudden, so precise, that none can recover from it. In personal dealings, too, patience separates the master from the slave. The one who reacts quickly to insult, to temptation, to desire, reveals that he is ruled by impulse. But the one who endures, who shows no rush to defend, no hunger to grasp, terrifies those around him. For they cannot read him, cannot provoke him, cannot control him. His silence becomes unbearable to others, and in their need to act, they reveal themselves. Patience is not idleness, it is calculation. It is the art of making time work for you instead of against you. The bow that is drawn slowly, steadily, without trembling, releases the arrow with far greater force than the bow pulled in haste. The same is true of men. The patient man wastes no strength on battles that do not matter. He fights only when he knows the victory is already his. Most men fight on equal ground, using the same weapons, the same strategies, the same ambitions. And because they are predictable, they are easily defeated. But there exists a hidden trait, rare and unsettling, that tilts the game before it begins, a trait that gives you an unfair edge. Machiavelli observed that power often belongs not to the strongest, but to the most unpredictable. When a man possesses something others cannot anticipate, an unusual skill, a dangerous calm, a perspective that breaks the pattern, he unsettles everyone around him. This is the hidden trait that grants an unfair advantage. Rivals cannot defend against what they cannot measure. They prepare for common enemies, for ordinary tactics, but not for the rare individual who fights by different laws. To be strange, to be unpredictable, to think in ways others dare not. That is to rule the board. Before the game has even begun, difference is not weakness. It is the lever that moves the world. Power does not always belong to the strongest arm or the loudest voice. More often, it belongs to the one who unsettles, the one who cannot be read, the one who disrupts the rhythm that others depend on. Men prepare themselves to face the ordinary, for the ordinary is predictable. But when they encounter something rare, something they did not account for, their calculations collapse. That collapse is where your advantage is born. The hidden trait that gives you an unfair edge is the ability to be different in a way that others cannot anticipate. The crowd thrives on patterns. They repeat the same gestures, the same strategies, the same ideas because it is safe. But safety is the enemy of power. A man who copies the moves of others is bound by the same limits as they are. He will rise only so high, achieve only so much, and always be trapped in their expectations. But the man who dares to be strange, who cultivates an uncommon strength or an unexpected quality, throws everyone else into disarray. He becomes difficult to calculate and therefore difficult to defeat. Consider the battlefield. An enemy who charges in straight lines is easy to resist, but the one who moves in ways no general has seen before unsettles entire armies. Confusion spreads faster than fear. In politics, too, the man who breaks with convention appears dangerous, even unstoppable, because his rivals cannot predict his next move. They cannot trap him in their familiar games, for he refuses to play by their rules. That is the unfair edge, the disruption of expectation. This trait can take many forms. Sometimes it is a skill so rare that none can match it. Sometimes it is a way of thinking that cuts against the grain of the age. Sometimes it is the audacity to act when all others hesitate. Whatever its form, it works because it separates you from the predictable. People fear what they cannot understand, and fear is a far sharper weapon than force. The masses may mock difference, but secretly they admire it. They may resist it, but secretly they are drawn to it. The rarest man becomes unforgettable because he cannot be replaced. He possesses something they do not, and therefore they must bend to him. His presence alters the balance of every room he enters, every negotiation he begins, every conflict he faces. Others are measured by common standards. He is measured by none. What gives this trait its true power is that it cannot be copied easily. Imitators may try, but imitation only proves their weakness. The original stands apart because he is untouchable, unpredictable, and irreplaceable. And when others cannot match you, they have no choice but to follow you. Most men spend their lives trying to blend in, to be accepted, to be like everyone else. But what is common is forgettable, and what is forgettable is powerless. The true strength lies not in sameness, but in daring to be different. Machiavelli understood that the one who separates himself from the herd commands attention, whether through fear, admiration, or envy. To be different is to become a figure that cannot be ignored. The masses cling to uniformity, for sameness is safe, but sameness buries them in obscurity. The man who dares to stand apart becomes the black stone among white marbles, impossible not to notice. His very presence disrupts the order of things. Being different is not a weakness to be hidden. It is a crown to be worn. For in the eyes of the world, rarity is power, and power belongs only to those who refuse to be ordinary. Men fear difference because it exposes their weakness. They hide in the comfort of sameness, seeking safety in numbers, convinced that blending in will protect them from judgment, from envy, from attack. And yet, what is common is invisible, and what is invisible has no power. The world remembers only those who dare to be distinct, those who break the mold, those who refuse to vanish into the crowd. To be different is to wield a hidden power, for even your presence alone unsettles the masses who depend on conformity. The crowd thrives on imitation. They look to one another for cues, dress alike, think alike, dream alike, and in doing so they lose their identity. But the man who separates himself, who wears his difference like armor, cannot be ignored. He becomes an object of fascination, sometimes hated, sometimes admired, but always seen. And visibility is the first form of power. You cannot influence the world if you are invisible to it. To be different is to step into the light where all eyes are forced to follow you. Difference also creates fear. The unfamiliar unsettles the human mind. When a man thinks differently, acts differently, carries himself differently, others cannot easily predict him, and what cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. It is not always strength of arm or wealth of gold that tilts the balance of power, but the mystery of a man who does not conform. His unpredictability becomes his weapon, for rivals do not know where to strike. History is shaped by men who embraced their difference. They refused to dilute themselves to fit into the expectations of others. Caesar did not conquer by being ordinary, nor did Alexander, nor did Machiavelli himself. They were marked by qualities that separated them from their peers: vision, audacity, cunning, and because of these they ruled. Their difference made them irreplaceable, and what cannot be replaced must be obeyed. To be different is not simply to stand apart, but to become a force that defines the terms of engagement. When others imitate, you innovate. When others hesitate, you act. When others conform, you disrupt. This contrast makes you indispensable in the eyes of some, and intolerable in the eyes of others. But whether loved or hated, you remain unforgettable. And in the struggle for power, to be unforgettable is to outlive your enemies and outshine your rivals. The masses will always scorn difference at first, but secretly they crave it. They long for a figure who stands outside their sameness, someone who proves that there is more than the ordinary life they have chosen. This is why leaders are followed, artists are admired, and rulers are feared, because they embody what the crowd cannot be. Power is never one single act. It is the weaving of traits, the mastery of laws that others overlook. The weak chase what is visible, but the strong exploit what is hidden. And when these hidden powers combine, they form a force no enemy can withstand. Machiavelli knew that strength does not lie in one weapon alone, but in the arsenal of qualities that others fear to cultivate. The power to walk away makes you untouchable. The power of solitude makes you unshakable. Patience makes you unstoppable. Difference makes you unforgettable. And the hidden trait, rare and unsettling, gives you an unfair edge that tilts every contest in your favor. Together, these do not merely grant influence. They create dominion. They turn a man into more than just another player in the game. They make him the one who writes the rules of the game itself. Power is never held by one trait alone. A single quality may give a man an advantage for a time, but to sustain authority, to dominate rather than merely survive, he must weave together the hidden laws that others are too blind to see. Each trait by itself unsettles the weak, but combined, they create a man who cannot be shaken, cannot be broken, and cannot be ignored. The power to walk away is the first shield. It frees you from chains that bind lesser men. Those who cling are controlled, but the one who can let go dictates the terms of every exchange. This freedom terrifies rivals, for it makes you untouchable. Yet freedom alone is not enough. Without the courage to endure solitude, a man who walks away may simply be lost. The hidden power of being alone ensures that when you withdraw, you are not diminished but sharpened. In silence you find clarity, and in clarity you discover the vision that the crowd will never see. But vision without timing is useless. This is why patience becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. It disguises your ambition under calm composure, waiting until the exact moment when the strike cannot fail. Impatience wastes strength on battles that do not matter. Patience ensures that when you move decisively with precision, leaving no chance of recovery for your enemy. To these powers must be added the rarest of traits, the one that unsettles because it cannot be predicted. This hidden edge may be a talent, a perspective, or a manner of acting that no rival can anticipate. It makes you unmeasurable, and what cannot be measured cannot be mastered. In every game, it tilts the balance before the first move is made. And when all these combine, they give birth to the greatest force of all, the power of being different. Not ordinary, not replaceable, but distinct in a way that commands attention and bends the will of others. Sameness fades into obscurity, but difference makes you unforgettable. Men may hate you for it, men may envy you for it, but they will never forget you, and memory is the foundation of influence. The laws of hidden power are not written for the masses cannot bear them. They are written for the few who dare to step outside the comfort of imitation, who embrace solitude, who master patience, who wield strangeness as a weapon, who wear difference as a crown, and who know that walking away is not loss but liberation. In the end, power does not belong to those who imitate, who conform, who rush, or who cling. It belongs to the few who dare to master what others fear to touch. The power to walk away frees you. The strength of solitude sharpens you. Patience hides your ambition until it is irresistible. A hidden trait unsettles your rivals before the game begins. Difference makes you unforgettable, and together, these hidden laws weave a man who is beyond the reach of ordinary chains. The masses will always chase approval, safety, and sameness, but history remembers only those who defied the herd, who cultivated these hidden powers, and who ruled not by chance but by design. The question that remains is not whether these powers exist, they are eternal, but whether you will dare to claim them. For the world bows not to the ordinary, but to the one who is different, untouchable, and unafraid.